Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
Spent the next 2-3 years studying it and becoming an instructor. But I realized, despite the fact Tony Robbins and everybody teaches great techniques and stuff, people are lazy. They want you to do it to them. So I got involved with hypnosis. It says, you tell me what you want and we'll get it. And I knew the limitations of hypnosis because I came around, Tony Robbins was just these were all my friends in the beginning. They were all nobodies. I knew all the great hypnotists. I knew the public speakers. I put together a group called Sleepwalkers to push hypnosis to see how far we could take it.
Welcome everyone. We're so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and joining us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis. Mental health and hypnotism, science, myths, and real stories. When you hear the word hypnosis, what comes to mind? For many, it's stage shows, swinging pocket watches, or someone under another's control. But what if hypnosis wasn't about losing control at all? What if it was about gaining focus, unlocking the mind's natural ability to heal, reduce stress, and find peace? Science tells us that hypnosis isn't magic, and it's not a gimmick. It's a powerful therapeutic tool that's been shown to help with anxiety, trauma, sleep problems, and even breaking free from addictions. Yet, despite the evidence, it remains one of the most misunderstood practices in mental health. A 2025 study showed hypnosis significantly improved quality of life, particularly in physical health, psychological health, and self-evaluation domains. A very recent quasi-experimental study in 2025 with 80 participants diagnosed with psychiatric disorders compared 6 individual hypnotherapy sessions over 4 weeks versus standard psychiatric care. The hypnosis group had large effect sizes in reducing both stress and anxiety. At longer-term follow-ups, in 7 trials, effect size rose to 0.99, suggesting improvements maintained or even increased over time. Today we pull back the curtain. Together with Dr. Eric Davis, we'll separate the myths from the truth, explore how hypnosis really works, and discover why it may hold answers for challenges so many of us face. And later in this episode, we'll hear directly from a hypnotist, John Petrocelli, who used hypnosis every day to help people transform their lives. This is not stage magic, this is mental health and hypnotism. Here are your hosts.
Well, howdy, and welcome to another brand new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson. Alongside me is my co-host, psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. And remember, each week we explore topics that impact our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And today we're diving into a subject that's often surrounded by mystery, misunderstanding, even skepticism: hypnotism. So I think, we have a really, really good guest that's going to join us today. And I think we'll have a really good show on helping people understand what hypnotism really is. And when I first thought of it, it's like, oh God, the guy's going to sit there, you're getting sleepy.
Yeah, you're getting sleepy.
That's right. But it's really, really not. So before we delve into this episode, I don't want to break continuity. I hate when channels do that. You're watching and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, sit back and relax a second. I want to take a moment and listen to this ad from our proud sponsor, Waypost Counseling.
Let's be real. Life can feel overwhelming. Sometimes we lose our direction. And in those moments, reaching out for help isn't weakness. It's strength. One of the most powerful things we can do for our mental health is simply to stop and ask for help. Well, look no further. Let me tell you about Waypost Counseling in Indianapolis, Indiana. Waypost was co-founded by husband and wife team Dr. Eric L. Davis and licensed therapist Aaron Davis. They started Waypost Counseling in 2020 because they wanted to create more than just a therapy practice. They wanted a place that truly walks alongside people through life's hardest seasons. And they offer more than just individual therapy. They provide individual therapy and couples therapy, problem gambling disorder, and consulting services as well. They work with adults navigating everything from ADHD to grief, addiction to life transitions. Every journey is different, but our goal is always the same: to help people pause, reflect, and realign with where they want to go. It's actually where their name, Waypost, comes from. A marker on the path, something to help guide your next steps. And for anyone listening who's been thinking, I don't know where to start, this might be the moment. Therapy doesn't have to be intimidating. At Waypost, you'll find honesty, warmth, and a practical approach to real change. They're here to help you find direction and walk with you every step of the way. Whether you are in Indiana or anywhere in the United States, help is just a phone call away. They treat clients in person or using video conferencing directly from your home. If you're ready to start that journey, visit waypostcounseling.com or call Dr. Eric L. Davis at 317-762-0904 or therapist Aaron Davis at 317-659-0179 and take the first step. Waypost Counseling is proudly certified by the Indiana FSSA Division of Mental Health and Addiction and the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Abuse. That's www.waypostcounseling.com. Your next chapter starts here. You need to make that first call.
When many people think of hypnosis, they picture stage acts where someone clucks like a chicken or falls asleep on command. But the reality is far different. For decades, medical and clinical professionals have used hypnosis as a tool to help people manage stress, reduce anxiety, overcome phobias, address sleep challenges, support recovery from trauma. Hypnosis has been used to stop smoking, losing weight, to excel in sports, memory retention, develop laser-like concentration, help ace those exams, and to help interview with confidence. It can even, as I said, help with sleep problems, nail biting, and so much more. Now, research continues to show that hypnosis is not about losing control, it's about gaining focus, harnessing the mind's natural ability to heal and change. So in tonight's episode, Dr. Davis and I will start by helping to unpack, I should say, some of the science behind hypnosis. We're going to explore the mental health conditions where it's been shown to be effective and break down the common myths that keep people from taking it seriously. And later in the show, we'll be joined by an old friend of mine, hypnotist John Petrocelli, who's worked with clients for many years, one-on-one, to guide them through these processes. And they'll share what really happens in sessions, the real sessions, not the stuff like you see on the stage, and how it's helped, medical treatments, mental health treatments, and why it can be a powerful complement to therapy. So it's going to be a great conversation. So sit back, take a breath, watch the thing, and join us as we explore mental health and hypnotism. So Dr. Davis, from your clinical perspective, what role do you see hypnosis playing in the broader mental health field today?
So there have been a lot of developments with altered states of consciousness as far as therapy is concerned. And so really, hypnosis can be used to kind of amplify the other types of treatment and things. So we see it, it creates a state that helps somebody relax, and a lot of those things are really important. For example, with a therapy called EMDR, that's helping the person to achieve an altered state of consciousness and then doing the therapeutic things in that state. And so hypnosis is very much like that. And it definitely has clinical value for sure.
Well, when most people hear hypnotism, they have, misconceptions that patients or clinicians have. I mean, sometimes when you say hypnotism to a woman, they think, no, he's going to put me under hypnosis and do things to me and stuff against your mind and your will and stuff. So, I mean, if you say to one of your clients in therapy, maybe you should talk about hypnosis. Okay, what are some of the things that you'll hear from people of why they're really skeptical of that?
Typically, things such as, like you said, hypnosis is going to make me be under somebody's control, or only gullible people can be hypnotized is another one. Or under hypnosis that could uncover hidden truths that I don't want anybody to know. Or it's sleep. It's none of the above. I mean, it really is just a relaxed state where we may be more suggestible, which in therapy is really important, especially if we're trying to fight against negative self-talk, and things of that nature.
And understand that the people that are listening, hypnotists can't make you do anything you don't want to do.
True.
I mean, so, it's not going to say, you know what, as soon as I, snap my fingers and you wake up, I want you to take off all your clothes and make passion love to me or something like that. That's not what hypnosis is. And I think that's the fear in a lot of people's heads. What hypnosis actually, like you say, it's going to break down some barriers that we've set up that we're
Yeah.
not even aware of that we've set up to actually approach some of the problems that we're having.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask our guest the same question later. How do you explain the difference between like a stage or entertainment hypnosis and therapeutic hypnosis?
I mean, really, it's exactly what you just said. Performance or stage hypnosis is really just to, you know, find individuals in the audience who are suggestible and, get them to kind of do funny things or whatever. But in therapeutic hypnosis, there's an actual the goal is some sort of a behavioral change, and like you were saying, if we can get a person to relax, that can break down some of the defensiveness, some of the mental defense mechanisms, and we may be able to, you know, communicate with the subconscious, so to speak, on a level that we couldn't if those defenses weren't down.
Hypnosis, for people to know, is an effective therapeutic tool, particularly when integrated with other mental health therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, which we call CBT, to treat anxiety, stress, panic disorders, and depression. Hypnosis enhances the effects of other treatments, improving coping strategies, help you address negative thought patterns by guiding the person into a relaxed state or heightened awareness. While it's not a standalone cure, its effectiveness varies. Hypnosis is supported by significant evidence from random controlled tests and trials, and it makes it a very valuable tool for improving mental and emotional well-being. So let's start with the obvious question. Okay, what is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy?
So cognitive behavioral therapy is perhaps the most common type of therapy that's used, and it really is what its name says. It's cognition, so it's our thinking, behavioral, our behaviors, and therapy, where we address maladaptive thinking patterns, negative self-talk, and especially like with addiction, there's addictive thinking that takes place, or what we call stinking thinking, and we teach the person to, mentally identify when that's happening and then do something different with that thought. So with hypnosis, you know, you can sometimes get more accomplished in a smaller amount of time because the person is more open or more suggestible, you know?
And it's probably easier taking if they're back in the time, let's say if you're dealing with an abuser or someone who's been abused, they should say, you're taking them right back to that moment. So we could talk about how they're feeling at that time.
Yeah.
And, because it's really, we're dealing with, the anxiety, all that stuff. We're dealing with something that happened to us in the past.
Yeah.
And, it's very hard. We have our defenses set up where, I know myself, I always used to say, no, that's all locked in a vault somewhere back in the back
Yeah.
of my head. Well, that's really what you're doing, but you're dealing with the effects of what you locked in the vault. And,
Yeah.
hypnosis is, I say it gives you a little bit of a combination to open that door a little bit and peek inside and
Yeah.
maybe help that. So, it shows, all research is showing that hypnosis can actually reduce anxiety and stress, improve quality of life, etc. So, from your own experience, do you think hypnosis is effective for some people?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, I'm happy to say hypnosis has been effective for me in the past.
Mhm.
Um, and it was, I was really interested to see what it would be because I had all the same misconceptions, as everyone else, but it really was just, getting into a very relaxed state, And then just, kind of listening, and thinking about different things as they're prompted. And I mean, I feel like it helps me, even though I did hypnosis years ago. I think it still has an effect. Um, yeah,
I've thought of it, but you know what? I'm such a control freak that you feel like you're gonna give up that control, of what I
yeah.
want to say and what I don't want to say, type of thing. And you can never heal that way if you don't. Um, are there certain conditions where it can help or even maybe hurt?
I'm not sure about hurt. I know definitely that hypnosis could help with like PTSD or anxiety, anything where relaxation can be difficult. Um, because obviously when you start delving into those past experiences, the person is going to have a defensive response, because that's how the body protects itself from those negative emotions or feelings. With hypnosis, if you can put the person at ease beforehand, really that may make the other aspects of the therapy easier for them,
So
or
how
for the
important
therapist
is the
too.
patient being at ease? Or is the word here hypnotizability? Okay, I had
Um,
to actually practice that word so I didn't screw it up.
I mean, I think it's pretty important. That one of the things that's really important and puts clients at ease is just having a good rapport. Like basically having a sense of trust, and them believing that you're there to help them, and so on and so forth.
Are there, and I think we may have even asked this a little bit, is there any kind of therapy that it would have zero effect on?
Not off the top of my head, um, but I don't know. That's something
Mhm.
I'm interested to find out.
Yeah, and and this is, I mean, I've never thought of hypnotism in mental health.
Yeah.
You always thought about, okay, I think probably the extent of it was, okay, maybe it can help you stop smoking.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what we heard over the years. You want it, especially as a smoker, you want to stop smoking, get hypnotized. And I had a friend of mine that was hypnotized and stopped smoking from
Yeah.
it. So it's like, okay, maybe you can do something, but I don't know. Let's talk about integration and counseling and
Okay.
therapy. If one of your clients asks you about hypnosis as an option, how would you decide whether or not to incorporate that in their treatment plan?
I would probably, try to explain to them, what it is as I understand it, if they have questions about it. And I would just try and make absolutely certain that they're very clear on what the limitations or what realistic expectations, et cetera, are. Where, like I think you even said a little bit ago, no therapy is one size fits all, and hypnosis is no different, where it really depends on the person. So, um, yeah, that's how I would handle it, and then I would refer them out to a hypnotist, um, if they felt like it could be helpful to them.
Do you think it's a good idea for people to use that as a standalone treatment and not in conjunction with, a therapist?
It really depends on the condition, I think. If it's something that obviously, like if it's anxiety disorder, for example, there's therapy can help to a point, hypnosis could help to a point, and medication could help to a point. But what we always say in behavioral health, the best treatment when you're talking about something that uh, requires medication is medication and therapy. And really, I mean, with a lot of conditions, it could be meditate or medication, um, therapy, and hypnosis. I mean, there's no reason that hypnosis couldn't potentially help as far as the
So
therapeutic interventions and
how
things.
would you work with a hypnotist? So in other words, you have, let's say, Steve's your patient.
Yeah.
Okay, how would you work with, let's say, someone like John? Okay,
Yeah.
to work collaboratively
I would
towards
have, so if the client wanted me to, which is,
right.
I would have the client complete a release of information, giving me permission to, to speak with that person, and I would reach out and touch base and see how we might be able to help the client together.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We've been hearing from Dr. Davis about the clinical perspective on hypnosis and where it fits into mental health care. Now we're excited to bring in someone who worked directly with hypnosis every day for many, many years. Yes, he's old. Okay. Our guest today is John Petrocelli, a professional hypnotist who has helped individuals use the power of focused attention and suggestion to reduce stress, manage anxiety, and make meaningful changes in our lives. John has trained extensively in the practice of clinical hypnosis and works with clients to apply this tool in very practical, real world ways. He's here to clear up some myths, share what actually happens in a hypnosis session, and talk about how hypnosis can be used alongside other mental health treatments. Dr. Davis and I am pleased to welcome to the Your Life Matters show this evening, John Petrocelli. Well, John, thank you for joining us tonight on the show. Again, for complete transparency, I've known John for many years, even though he may not want to admit that, but we grew up in the same neighborhood, volunteered through the same church, worked alongside his relatives for many years at St. Anthony of Padua Church in New York City's Greenwich Village. In fact, I even went to school with his younger brother. He was in my class there. So knowing me for many years, that does not take away from the amazing career that John has had in the hypnosis arena. He's been a judge for many years also for something that's coming up, the annual Greenwich Village Holiday Parade, which we'll ask him about really at the end. So, John, can you share with us how you became interested in hypnosis and what led you to specialize in medical hypnosis?
Well, it's more than medical hypnosis because medical hypnosis sort of misnomer. When I got into this, there wasn't really hypnosis. There was these little back ads with hypnotists. I thought they were all vampires. I'd call them up. They say $70, and I'm saying minimum wage is $1.30. I'm not coming. So I got involved with the early public speakers, the Zig Ziglars, and that's what the things were back then. And finally, something called the Silva method came around. And I took that and I went to those meetings, introductory meetings for like 3 years, saying, you're full of it. You're full of it. And when I finally took the class after I got out of college, it changed my life. So I spent the next 2-3 years studying it and becoming an instructor. But I realized, despite the fact Tony Robbins and everybody teaches great techniques and stuff, people are lazy. They want you to do it to them. So I got involved with hypnosis. It says, you tell me what you want and we'll get it. And I knew the limitations of hypnosis because I came around, Tony Robbins was just these were all my friends in the beginning. They were all nobodies. I knew all the great hypnotists. I knew the public speakers. I put together a group called Sleepwalkers to push hypnosis to see how far we could take it. And because I had these huge groups, which when Yahoo groups got all around the world, I had groups of people that none of these hypnotists or public speakers could get. So they loved me. They invited me to all their classes for free. I was filling their classes because I had nothing to teach. We were doing 6 days a week. We're teaching basic hypnosis and let's try NLP techniques this week. Let's try this. And that went on until these guys pushed me to open up hypnosis practice for all of them to practice. And once I got involved, all my friends disappeared. Now it was competition. And I started over 37 years. I say 37 because that's when I stopped remembering, but it's over 40 years. And we were doing hypnosis, but again, I realized the limitations of hypnosis. It didn't really clear the stuff. Like Tony Robbins, I love his stuff, but I went to his groups in New York City, and these people were almost using pure willpower, and they weren't nice people. It didn't change their internal thinking. Then I saw a guy, Stephen Parkhill, out of Florida, who wrote a book called Answer Cancer, and he was doing regression hypnosis. And he was getting results with diseases that nobody else could touch from cancer on. So I started doing regression hypnosis. I had an office. If 4 or 5 people could do the stop smoking people for an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever they did. And my sessions went on from 3.5 to 7 to 9 hours, depending if you were 20 years old, might be 2.5 hours. If you were 60 years old, I figured I might as well pitch a tent. And we go back through those earlier memories, but then we'd go back through them knowing what you know now as an adult, and then replay them. And that could be a long period going from in the womb to childbirth. But it totally changed any feelings that were connected to those memories, and they became like a black and white image. And it didn't change the memories, it changed you from caring about it. And whatever symptoms in the body it was causing just miraculously disappeared. And I went off from that to studying with Gil Boyne and stuff, and he did anger sessions. And Fritz Perls had, the famous, and Virginia Satir, but Gil Boyne had people imagine they were in a room, and there was a chair there, and in that room chair, the person who most offended you, most screwed up your life would appear. And these were screaming and punching sessions. Believe me, I got hit many times. And 98% of the time it was mom. So we do an interplay. Say, Mom, you hurt me. Mom, you made me feel. Mom, you made me whatever. Hit a bang, boing him on the head. Mom, how's that make you feel? You hurt that kid. Is that what you meant to do? Until we could get forgiveness. And then I'd do 2 other people. It would change everything. People would call up their father they haven't spoken to in 40 years. They call up their mother after. The last session I usually do 3 sessions, was a guilt session. All right, now let's put that part of you that's been holding you back. And that's the part that says, don't do this. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. And we do the interplay until we got forgiveness, and forgiveness could take a long time in the chair. And it was amazing. People went on to great stuff, from coming in suicidal, depressed, no hope. And that's what I did. And there was much more than this, because I studied NLP. I studied everything that was imaginable. And I used it in session, which nobody else did. Nobody did as much as I did. And all the greats that, like when I met Gil Boyne the first time, he said, how are you doing this stuff? I said, well, you said you could do this. He says, no, I couldn't. I said, well, because I believed you could do it, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any limitations. But a lot of the great people and a lot of the beginning hypnotists were real crooks. I mean, they would have somebody come for I had one bus driver in New Jersey, couldn't read, but he had a great memory. So he knew all the stops, and he became, I can't say the bus line, the president wanted him to be vice president, and he couldn't tell the guy he couldn't read. And this hypnotist in New Jersey had him come for 2-3 years, every week for like $200-something. I said, what do you do after the secretary? It did more relaxation. So we did one session, a long regression session. He was reading a week later after all these years. And well, now he was close to retirement. He didn't want the job with the bus company anymore. But that was the same thing. I've seen people come in. I wish somebody would throw me in a chair, but I didn't have anybody who had my same skill set. I said, I got into this to learn what was good for me. Screw the rest of you. But I had to, and I had a worker who came in and went through my file cabinets and stuff. And over the years, with all the sleepwalker meetings and stuff, he counted over 35,000 people I worked with over the years.
Wow.
And
That's amazing, man.
yeah, because somebody never went through. I didn't want to open that file cabinet. We just threw everybody's intake forms and class meetings in there. And it was great. But, if you're successful at something like this, the medical profession hates you.
Well,
medical profession.
I love you.
They want you to take drugs for the rest of your life, or, they'll address the symptoms. Yeah. But when you clear up those memories, you can't even, you think of that old memory like, you can't even bother to think. And if I did a really good job, it took people sometimes a year to realize that I did such a good job. They didn't even realize they had those problems when they came in. Everybody told me I changed since I've seen you. Go ahead.
What kind of training or certification process did you go through to practice as a hypnotist?
Okay. The early stuff, most of the classes, basically, it was a con job. They charge anywhere from $300 to $1,500 to learn how to read a script at a third grade level. I said I could teach you that in 2 hours. That was their whole skill set. NLP came along and people learned stuff, but NLP, the news media is using it all right now.
Oh, yeah.
And they're using the 3 elements of hypnosis. But like Kenrick Cleveland, this guy was like a 400-pound guy who used NLP, was one of the first guys with Bandler's. He sold more gym club memberships 1-to-1, and he was like huge. And he was his top NLP teacher. He taught the one thing that they all forgot, NLP teachers. For this to be effective, you have to get rapport with the people. Because if you don't get rapport, you can get people to do whatever you want. But like you're seeing now in the media, they will hate you in the end and come after you and turn against you. But when you have rapport, they can't wait to do what you say, and they feel good about it. So Kenrick Cleveland was great years ago. As far as hypnosis trainings, and I took everybody's at the time, all the top trainers, because I was putting those people in his class. I was mostly self-taught. There was a guy, Jerry Kine, out of Florida. And if you could get his tapes, the Elman tapes and stuff, Gerald Kine had one of the best classes, but when I entered his class, I already knew this stuff because I had actually practiced on people. But Jerry Kine was good. Everybody came out of Jerry Kine in Florida, DeLand, Florida. Stephen Parkhill, who developed the techniques of regression and forgiveness. Cal Banyan ripped off Stephen Parkhill. I shouldn't say that, but he came out with an effective course, but it was really Stephen Parkhill's course. Gil Boyne, it was like one of the top hypnotists in California, hypnotists of the stars. He would call me up, and can you imagine shocked? I grew up in his neighborhood. This guy, the top hypnotist, calling me up and asking me for advice. I said, "This is Gil Boyne." But and then I met the strange ones like William Baldwin, who did the spirit depossession stuff. We did that for 2 years, and I'll give you a friend's name if you want to call him up and ask. I don't want to put it here. We'll scare everybody to be Jesus. What sometimes comes up when you're probing memories and what else is in there. So, what was the question, by the way?
No, I think you basically answered it. But it is an interesting thing. I'm listening to all of this, and the average Joe or Jane, okay, when they hear hypnotist, okay, we've been so programmed from Hollywood and like television, to have that the guy sitting there with the the stop that little pocket watch and stuff, and yeah, okay, we're gonna make you stand up and quack like a duck and all that stuff. How did you deal with people getting past that stigma that people have in their head, a pre-designed notion of what a hypnotist is?
Well, I spent the mornings. First of all, I had a following of thousands on YouTube groups of young guys who essentially want to learn hypnosis to learn how to talk to women. Because if you remember when we grew up, there were no beautiful women walking around. We all had, the Charlie's Angels poster and the Raquel Welch poster, and we saw a lot of women that looked like female longshoremen. More hair on their body than a chia pet. I mean,
we also lived in Greenwich Village.
Yeah,
that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was 18, we go out to 20 bars. There'd be one woman there with one tooth, and guys, I guess that or the German Shepherd. We weren't sure. But guys wanted to talk to this elusive beauty that we had no clue where they were. They didn't go out to clubs back in those days till a few years later. And I had this whole group, and that group, because it was all young guys. Yeah. And what was the second part of the question?
No, how did you get past that?
Once I opened up an office, people would call me for an hour or two, and I would talk to them. And I told people, hypnotists later on, the most effective you could do in sales is keep them on the phone and keep them talking about themselves. I had women call me up after an hour on the phone and say, you changed my life, this and that. And you know what I did? Nothing. I just sat there. Yeah. But yeah, and I tell guys, women don't want you to talk to them. Just shut up and say yes. An hour later, they're cured.
From someone who's been married 20 something years, they just want you to listen.
Yeah.
When they ask you what you think, no, they don't want to know what you
No, no.
think. They want you to agree with them. I got to make sure she's not standing in the doorway. They want you to agree with them.
Do I look fat in this dress?
No, son,
So
the circus is really upset they're missing the tent, but no,
Yeah.
you look fine.
what's a typical hypnosis session look like? So like, can you kind of walk us through what a typical session, kind of the format?
Okay, I'll tell you what mine does. My workers, it was totally different because they were lazy. They wanted the money I paid them, and they mostly did smokers or
Okay.
simple stuff that hypnosis would deal with. And we used a lot of NLP techniques. We guaranteed we did a smoking session that sessions would be free if it didn't work, but not if you came back 5 years later. 5 years
Right.
later, I'd say, well, you came in here smoking 3 packs a day for 5 years. Give me the money you saved on that, then we'll do a free session. But typical thing, we fill out an intake form, and I'd ask them. And the one question that always was what they did for a living, because job dissatisfaction is one of the major causes of stress.
Yeah.
And we'd go through all this. Then we do something called criteria installation, which I got from Kenrick Cleveland and Mark Cunningham. And it basically, this is the formulation. If you take away stuff from persons, it's going to fill in. You turn on the news, it's going to fill in that void. So we had to give them a direction. And the direction is, if you woke up tomorrow morning and you could have anything in your life, what's one of the things you'd happen? What do you want? I'd want to have money. Okay, what's important about having money? Okay, what's important about that? And we'd break it down to where it got the freedom, happiness, and purpose in life. And one of the first exercises I did to get them used to the sound of my voice, we did an element induction. I said, put this in that special place where your mind can work on it, play with it, experiment with it. Then one day when it feels right, it'll just flow over into the core of your being. See yourself waking up tomorrow morning. Your mother, your wife's greeting you at the table. The kids are behaved, they smile. You're going through your day. You go to work, the boss says hello, this and that. You wouldn't believe that, but people come back, my wife's treating me so freaking good, or women, when I deal with women, says, my husband's doing it. No, you changed, lady. It wasn't your husband. So we do criteria because we have to have something to focus on. Otherwise, you're going to remove stuff. Then I program that in for a hand drop method. When I drop your hand, you could go into there's a person in your life that goes, and there'd be a lot of screaming, yelling, and I had to duck several times. And we follow the feeling. There's a feeling in your body that's close to that feeling. Go back, 3, 2, 1, where are we? I'm 4 years old, daddy's beat me, Focus on that feeling in your body. Go back even earlier, 3, 2, 1. With certain cultures, like Russian women, they go back a few days out of the womb. Wow. And they have vivid memories, and it didn't have to be a visual memory. It could be, I feel warm, or there's colors, and everything has a meaning. If you go through a memory, they're in college, it's just blackness. It's usually a period of drug abuse, and there's no memories there. But there was nobody to tell me this stuff. It was just constantly going through it. And when you feed back instructions, you have to make sure you're feeding back their instructions because they can't resist that. What would you tell that younger you, knowing, does mommy love you? Yeah. Well, if mommy loved you, what would you tell that younger you? What do you want to know about mommy? Mommy loved you. Mommy cared about you. Okay, let's rewind to 3, 2, 1. We're right back there. Now that younger you knows everything you just told her. How she's reacting with mommy. Oh, she's going up to her and hugging her. She's giving her a kiss. She's telling her, I love you. You just changed the whole freaking feeling and memory. And my last few years, I was working with the Montclair Metaphysical Center, psychics, and, and they all see I've ruined a lot of them because we go back to that early memory where they were seeing ghosts, and that memory was always in the basement and up at the window Okay, let's rewind it. 3, 2, 1. It's even clearer now. What's up there? Oh, it's just a tree. I just destroyed all their. I'm sure a couple of them want to shoot me.
Well, you know what, but I mean, a lot of even paranormal investigators, wish that we had someone like you with us, where they say, "Oh, yeah, we've seen this, this, and that," and it's like, "No, you haven't." Or they send you a video. Don't you see that? No, we don't. Okay, step back 5 feet and take a look at it again. And you'll see that that's not the case. Um, because we deal, I mean, basically we do a mental health show. What challenges have you found hypnosis to be most helpful for, like anxiety, trauma, phobias, sleep? I mean, has there been anything that's been really, really good for?
They're all linked. They're all linked. Anxiety, depression, it's all the same. I told them I don't treat depression. I don't treat, why should I treat it? Because when we clear up the issue, there's no resulting symptoms. Things would clear up like skin rashes. You clear up the stress. One thing with women, right? Can't get pregnant. They finally go and adopt. Well, we do this work, we clear up the things. Next week, they're pregnant. Good luck. Now you got 2 of them.
Instant family.
It would change. Sometimes the results, they'd call me up. I left that guy that was beating me. What'd you do to me? I wanted to be able to stay with him. 6 months later, they called me up. I found the most wonderful guy in the world. But you would have been stuck in that other relationship, taking the beating. Sometimes, for me, the best jobs I had were the ones who fired me because I always got a better one later. But I would have never left it if I stayed. And it's the same thing. This work is painful a lot. I'd walk out of my office up by Macy's at 12 o'clock at night like somebody beat me with a 2x4 after 6 hours. This is draining.
Well,
It's
we
not
always
easy.
say on this show that even like what Dr. Davis said, you got to take care of yourself on top of that. It's so important to be aware of what you're going through because you can't help anybody if you can't help yourself.
Well, if you know the techniques, you can, because I couldn't help myself
Well,
either.
yeah,
But
well, you can do
I, I,
it.
I was doing this 6, 7 days a week. I mean, day and night. Not altruistic methods. I had an office up in Midtown. It was the rent. You know, I had Europeans who called me. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. When are you open? I said, when can you get here? Thinking 2 weeks I got to have $3,000 for this rent up here for this tiny office. So I just saw no way out. I had to work 6, 7 days a week, but I loved my job too because I was challenging myself all the time. I knew you were going to get the results if you followed my instruction. And I yell at people. I says, you follow my instruction, you get the results. If not, get out of that seat. I got 10 other people who are ready and willing to come in here.
Mhm.
And some people, I tell that over the phone, especially smokers. Why do you want to stop? I want to stop for my wife. Well, would you stop for yourself? No, I love smoking. Well, stay home and die. And I hang up on him. 2 years later, he says, you're right. I didn't want to stop, but now I'm ready. I had 3 stents put in last night. That's when they're ready. If you take them beforehand, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, well, as a former smoker, you have to want to stop.
Yeah.
If you don't want to stop, don't stop for somebody else because you're never going to
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
You
But
have to want to stop.
I had about 5 other techniques which squashed your feelings for
Mhm.
flavor of smoking. I linked them to like horse shit or something you stepped in. We taught you a breathing technique, which is the real habit of
Mhm.
smoking. Pick up a pen, whatever you want to do. Um, yeah, yeah. If you, I had more success. I think I had 2 people who took me up on coming back for smoking, except for the people called 5 years later. Says, is this still free? No. You pay my rent first. It's free.
Are there any instances where you feel like hypnosis might not be appropriate for somebody? Are there
Oh,
any
yeah,
any
yeah.
instances?
Oh, definitely. That's why I had long conversations with people before. If they have a desired outcome against getting the results. No, I want to suffer and you're not going to help me. And they will fight you tooth and nail. Or, well, if I get a job, then I'll get my free checks from the government. They have a desired outcome and it's programmed. And there are certain cultures where I won't mention the cultures where It's
Yes, please.
they were more, they were tougher than anybody else. It was like having Woody Allen in a chair.
Well, are there people, a question that we haven't even talked about here. Are there people that really can't be hypnotized? Or can everyone be hypnotized?
Yeah, if you have a low IQ and you can't focus on anything, I
Mhm.
mean, or you have a desired outcome against the results. But same people say can't be hypnotized. It's just as we get older, I drive all over the place, but my wife talks. I'm 5 miles off course. We go into the hypnotic state. It's a state of learning. That's all it is. It's not any of those farfalutin definitions they use to sell courses. It's
Right.
it's a normal state of learning. And yes, if your brain's there's something wrong with your brain, you can't focus. Of course, you can't be hypnotized. You can't even focus for 5 minutes. The smarter you are, the better subjects you are. You know, when I was down by the World Trade Center, all my clients were lawyers and doctors, and not the run-of-the-mill doctor, the three percenters.
Wow.
So I'm scared of lawyers and doctors nowadays.
I've
So
always been scared of
speaking of
lawyers. Sorry, friends.
speaking of
Yeah.
doctors and stuff like that, from your experience, what do mental health professionals most often misunderstand about hypnosis?
Well, you know how hypnosis got its start in the medical profession? There was no ether or anything for dentists. So a bunch of dentists got together in New Jersey, and Dave Ellman taught them to distract it. Little girl, imagine you're in the park on your thing, and while you're doing that, I'm going to gently rub your tooth. And he did extractions. I mean, Esdale did over 3,000 operations successful with an amputee. You or cut out something in India because they had nothing. And the medical profession said, you're doing the work of the devil. And then later, ether came along, and all of a sudden, the work of the devil was okay to do, as long as you use ether or something like that. But, dental school was the only medical profession where hypnosis was taught.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's really interesting to know.
Yeah.
Do you see any connections? I know that there's a lot of emerging types of therapy where we're basically looking at altered states of consciousness.
Mhm.
Like there's psychedelic therapies getting a lot of attention, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reintegration, I think is what it
Yeah.
is. But basically, where you get the person, you mimic rapid eye movement, and they found that like if you can get a person in kind of that REM sleep sort of
Yeah.
mindset by getting their eyes moving, that they're able to, there seem to be better results. And I mean, I guess as a hypnotist, are there things of that nature that you saw connections to, or do you think there's
Yeah, and I,
something
I
to that?
incorporated them all in, like EFT is like EMDR. Well, even though I want to kill my uncle, I totally and completely accept myself. And we tap away the feeling. EMDR
Yeah,
is a version of that. I mean,
yeah,
there were a lot of offshoots, I guess, for copyright restrictions. Or do they work? They work to a degree. It's just that most of the practitioners took like a day class and they don't know where to go. You go to them
yeah.
2 or 3 times and then they're like, that's the extent of my skills. I'm sorry. So,
Which is when they're supposed to refer you to a specialist at that point that,
well, they
someone
usually
with,
are a specialist.
yeah, well, no, but yeah, well, that too. But I mean, if you get a good doctor, they'll say, I'm not familiar with that, but you know what? I can send you to someone who specializes in
Yeah.
just that, has studied it and stuff. So,
Yeah.
John, I'm going to ask you one last question before we run out of time on this. Okay. If today someone was seeking a hypnotist to help with the problems they have, number one, where should they go? But number two, how do they know the person that they're going to isn't that charlatan that just says, "Hey, give me your money and I'll, hypnotize you to stop smoking."
Well, listen, that's a hard answer. There's a
Hmm.
woman, Wendy Weber. I think she's overseas. She wrote a great book. She did what I did to basic extent. And but the pandemic screwed everybody up because, like, the New York hypnotist did everything by phone. And I never did anything by phone because I didn't want people to abreact during this crying and screaming and that my Zoom call goes out and they kill themselves. Yeah. So I don't, they became Zoom and they saw how much money they could make 20 calls doing a half an hour reading a script, sitting there in their underwear. And the industry didn't come back to doing live sessions like we were. And of course, now we got politicians that are pushing us toward anger. And I don't know how to deal with that because that's a desired outcome. You know, a desired outcome when somebody hates somebody and they can't give you rational reasons, but the mind keeps on bringing up nonsensical. Same thing as denial and alcohol. You know, a woman comes in a room, husband's in bed with two beautiful women. You're, and he turns around and says, "Why are you late?" Like this don't exist. Denial. I mean, I worked a lot with denial over the years. You know, I even went to AA meetings for 3 years because I had a friend who was a social butterfly. I went to 4 or 5 meetings a day for a while, and I don't drink. And I was a bartender in a lesbian bar for a while. I don't drink, but it was the only way to figure it out because they lied to counselors, they lied to themselves, and I got amazing results. But not all alcoholics want to stop. You know, so you know, you
So, but how do you know? Is there an organization that they can check credentials on, or is
yeah, that's the biggest farce, and they hate my guts because I said you collect all this money, you get people who want to be hypnotists coming here for 20 years, they drop a couple $1,000s at the convention, and they come back the next year, and people sell the stuff at the convention. They put it in sealed wax paper, and they said they buy the same stuff every year for $300, $400. They must have a shelf full of this stuff, but when I went up there, I said, how many people are actually doing it? Because I put together those sleepwalkers free practice meetings. These were people who are actually doing the techniques. The people who go to the convention don't. But the conventions make a lot of money. It's like people teach hypnosis classes. You teach a class where you're charging 500 to 1,500 people and $1,500 a pop, and you got 30 people in the class. There's a lot of money. Most of the most famous ones have never done a one-on-one hypnosis session in their life.
well, so is it really then, they look someone up and look for reviews, or because reviews, testimonials, I designed websites for years. I think that was the biggest crock. When people say, well, we need to put testimonials. Yeah, I can write anything you want. We watched the Your Life Matters show. It's one of the greatest shows that's up, anybody can say that stuff, but I'm more concerned, should they get, did you get any kind of referrals through therapists, through licensed therapists and psychotherapists?
I had a lot of them. I had my most famous one was like some sort of New York public service who had this young Pakistani woman who had all these issues, and they all interviewed and they given up on her. So they sent it to me. So I did what I normally do with everybody, and I can't remember back how far it was, but they were calling me up. What'd you do to her? She's totally changed. She's now social. She was never social. She was this and that. I said, I do what I do with everybody. But they really checked me out before they would send people. And, a lot of doctors who end up with people who have a desired outcome against doing whatever they say, where are they going to send you? They send you to me. So,
Well, John,
and a lot of those doctors were my clients too. They wouldn't tell them that either.
but that helps too, because they know they can trust you. And I guess really you got to hope that your therapist can at least point you in a direction that's fairly safe. But listen, I know we're running out of time here. I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and helping us better understand how hypnosis can be a powerful tool for mental health. I
And
believe you cleared
can I
up
say
a
one
lot.
other thing?
You sure can.
My last 2 years, something I avoided was kids. Because I had a social worker working for me. I had two social workers over time, and their expertise with kids, they never got results. So I had nobody working for me. So I have them bring in, and these are kids under 10 years old, but I keep the mother in the room with me. And they'd be so totally distracted. The mother'd be there. And they're so easy to work with 10-year-old kids because you don't have many memories to go back to and get amazing freaking results. And I was good at that. And I thought, like, I don't even like kids. And but I wish I had done more because I could cut those like 7-hour sessions down to 2 hours
Hmm.
and pay the rent on time.
Yeah, that usually helps,
Yeah,
especially in New York too.
yeah.
But so to our listeners who are curious about hypnosis, hopefully this conversation with John gives a clearer picture of its potential. And remember, as always, your mental health matters, and there are many different tools and approaches available to support your journey. We'll have links in the video description for all of this. John, thanks again for joining us. Now, I don't want to walk away because as I was reading that, I remember how did you get? I've always meant to ask you, even as friend, how did you get involved with the Halloween parade in Greenwich Village?
Well, you know, I live on Houston and
Well,
Thompson for
yeah,
years,
right.
and it used to be right outside Houston and Thompson, and you couldn't get outside your apartment. And if you stood online, you were 5 deep. You couldn't even see anything. But if you joined the parade, you could see everything. You're walking right through. You could walk right up. The cops leave you alone. This and that. And I did it so many years. I said, let me volunteer for this. I get a better view. And I've been doing it 10, 15 years now.
Hmm.
My friend comes in from Indiana and now he's bringing his daughter in. She's of age and we have a blast. But it's the best parade. It's the only all volunteer supported parade in New York City. They don't take public funds, you
Right.
know.
And
And
you also get to see our good friend Peter Barron
yeah, I
going
see him
through
on
as
his
well.
float,
Yep.
singing his vampire songs.
Yep. Exactly. So, John, thanks for joining us,
Yeah.
and we appreciate you being with us today.
Thanks, John.
Have a
Okay.
great day.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Okay.
So, Dr. Davis, some people worry about losing control under hypnosis. From a mental health standpoint, how valid are those concerns?
I mean, in a clinical setting, you're not going to lose control. You can open your eyes, you can speak, you can stop at any time. I mean, it's not like you lose complete control of your body or anything. Um, you know, so it'd be like really the way that it's best is it's collaborative suggestions,
Hmm?
really. And that's I'll leave it at that.
Are there, I think I asked this before. There's those situations that we know of where that would be harmful for
I mean,
someone.
other than
Well, here's a
if
question,
someone was
but okay, let me
dissociating,
re-ask that. If I can
okay.
re-ask that question, okay, because a thought came to me. Would it be too early in treatment for someone to go into hypnosis? Like, what hit me is, let's say someone was raped.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, to put them right away,
Yeah.
to regress them back right to that time.
Yeah. They may
I,
not be ready. I mean, that's a
yeah.
that's a perfect example where, the client may not be, and we run into that same stuff in therapy where, it has to, we don't just start tearing into, the
Hmm.
person's experiences and dredging everything up. I think some of the situations where hypnosis probably would not be the right fit if someone's actively in psychosis, or if
Right.
they're actively dissociating, there's other things at play there that probably need to be addressed, or something like seizure disorders, you know.
You see, and that's what I thought about when I asked the question earlier in the show about standalone
Yeah,
hypnosis. That's why, for certain things, yes, stop smoking, blah, 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 and biting your nails and stuff. But I think it could be so effective if it worked together,
yeah,
and a collaborative effort. And unfortunately, even as, John just said, it doesn't sound like too many of the current hypnotists want to do that.
yeah,
And that's sad because we could probably accomplish so much more in such a quicker period of time and more effectively if it was worked together. So,
yeah,
um, I asked John and he sort of like skirted around the issue because I don't think he could really answer it. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, but
yeah.
the professional training and safeguards people should look for if they're considering hypnosis for any kind of mental health support? What should they look for?
Well, so you can always look for a licensed health professional, a licensed behavioral health professional. Um, you want to definitely find someone that has formal hypnosis training, you know, where it's not, like, and I say this jokingly, but where it's not Hypnosis or Us, or something like that, like 5-minute class,
Uh,
Basically, the other thing is, there need to be an informed consent for hypnosis, documentation, treatment goals. um and the other thing is, you want to make sure that someone's not basically promoting like miracles, or
right.
snake oil, those sorts of things.
Mhm.
So those
Well,
are
as
good
John
places to
talked about,
start.
he said there was a lot of scams and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what scares people into it, away from it, is because of those scams. It's like
Yes.
the get rich quick type of thing. What? You're retired and you don't have $5 million in the bank. Here, give us your money and we'll,
Mhm.
we'll
Yeah.
invest it tomorrow. So, all right, I want to follow up, a close up, I should say, with two last questions. If you had to summarize in a few words, how would you describe the place of hypnosis in the future of mental health treatment?
I would say it's a targeted, skills-based amplifier for evidence-based care. So it's a way to take evidence-based, treatments and really target specific areas, with hypnosis. And
Mhm.
I think that's a good place in the future.
So, my last question, what advice would you give our listeners? I think I asked John about this, who are curious but hesitant about trying hypnosis as part of the healing journey.
I would recommend that they, do some research on things, really educate yourself on what hypnosis is, what it looks like, how it could potentially help. Something that a lot of people don't do, which would be good if they did, is you can always go on Google Scholar, and all of the stuff that's published on there is empirically based studies on any topic that you basically can think
Mhm.
of. So, if you're someone that wants evidence-based research on different types of therapies or therapeutic techniques or additions to therapy or so forth, that would be a good place to find, because those are actual, peer-reviewed studies that will tell you exactly what was found. And I know that there's a lot of research out there on hypnosis. Um, and I would recommend, talk to others. If you know someone that's tried hypnosis, talk to them, talk to a therapist, talk to a hypnotist. There's nothing wrong with doing your research before you even decide whether to pursue something or not. It's actually
Right.
a really smart thing to do most of the time.
Same way you're going to trust a therapist, you have to trust the hypnotist,
Mhm.
because you're going to open up your private thoughts and mind to someone, and you want to make
Yeah,
sure that they're a credible person to be doing that to.
absolutely.
That's probably the biggest fear people have, is right there, is they're
Yeah,
going to become vulnerable to a stranger. And like John said, I mean, you listen to John, how much he learned and continued to learn throughout his career,
yeah,
studying and taking different courses. You want someone that did just get their degree and just say, okay, yeah, I'm the expert at this.
yeah,
I don't think anyone's ever an expert at it. They're an expert at giving advice on it. That's
yeah.
about really all they are. So as we wrap up today's episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast, we want to take a moment to reflect on what we learned today. Okay, hypnosis is not a trick or a gimmick. It's a therapeutic tool with decades of clinical use and a growing body of research behind it. We heard Dr. Davis explain how hypnosis works on the mind, clearing up myths and giving us a deeper appreciation for the potential. And we're grateful to John Petrocelli for giving us an insider look at what a session really feels like, the types of challenges it can address, and how it can work hand in hand with traditional therapy. For many years, the idea of hypnotherapy can sound intimidating. But we hope that today's conversation shows that in the right hands, it's about safety, collaboration, and empowering individuals to take a more active role in their healing journey. So whether it's managing stress, facing fears, or opening new pathways to change, hypnosis has the potential to be a valuable addition to mental health care. As always, we encourage you, our listeners, to stay curious. It's wondering whether hypnosis might help you or not. Just talk to a qualified professional, ask questions. The more we learn, the more tools we have to support our mental health. Now, I want to thank Dr. Davis for sharing his expertise. And of course, a heartfelt thank you to our guest, John Petrocelli, for joining us today. And all of you listening, thank you for being part of this community. Okay, I'm sure by the time the show ends, we've up to over 5,000 subscribers. Well, we're not planning on quitting there. We want to go even more. But we're glad you're listening. I mean, we really are. And we really hope you share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. Please leave us a comment about your thoughts or even your experiences with hypnosis. Hit the like button and hit that little bell so you don't miss any episodes. Remember, you can visit our website at yourlifemattersshowpodcast.com to learn more about Dr. Davis and I, the show, and you can catch up on any missed episodes. Remember, there's also a link to purchase some official show merchandise, and I won't talk about the pajamas. All funds go directly to help the show. So until next time, remember this. Together, we can keep finding ways to support the journey of healing and of hope. Be nice to everyone, even if you do not agree with what they're saying, especially today in today's times. Have a discussion with words, not violence. And of course, never forget your life matters. God bless you all and have a great evening. And we hope to see you all again next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode with your hosts, Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so, and hit the like button and leave a comment. Your help with this helps us reach a wider audience that may need our help.